In this video, I'm going to show you how to take your Google Documents and upload them to VoiceFlow using NAN, so you don't have to manually do it. So if you have a client or you just want to have it automatically sync, this is a great tool that you can use and a great workflow. Now, this is going to be a more simple, basic workflow to show you how to just get it done. And then we'll cover at the end a little bit more of a complex workflow in terms of how to make something a little bit more robust using NAN. So with that in mind, you first have to have a VoiceFlow account so that you'll be able to capture the API keys. And then the next, you'll have to have a Google Documents folder that has all your knowledge base documents in it. Now, if you want it to be more dynamic and pick up a variety of files, it's better to have a folder, but you can use single file names if that's what you're looking for. So we'll start with a schedule trigger. So we'll look up schedule trigger. And I'll just set it for midnight. Next, we want to add a Google Drive search folder. So we'll just search Drive, find Google Drive, and then search files and folders. Now, there's a few things that we'll have to do. We'll first have to move this to advanced search. And then once we have that to advanced, we'll have to go and capture our folder, Google Drive folder. And you can find the ID for the folder up in the URL. So just go to the folder that you want to use. So I have 2 knowledge base documents in this folder. I'm just going to copy this portion of the URL at the very end. And then I'm just going to copy and paste that with apostrophe. And then you have to also include a few extra features. So you has to be in parent, but this will also capture some trashed items. So we'll have to do and trashed equals false. So you'll have to have this full bit. Now let me double check. Yep, so this is exactly how I have it. So you have the apostrophe, the file name or the file ID in parents, and trashed equals false. Oop, I didn't save it. Let me go copy that real quick. All right. And I'll go and test that setup. So now we have the 2 files within this folder. And so this process is going to cycle through both of those files. So with that, we want to download the file as a binary file. So we'll go and create a new node. So we'll look at Drive, go look for download file. And then we want to do file by ID. And then we'll take the ID from this number right here. And this will target all the files in it because it'll cycle through all the files and provide the ID associated with it. So I want to double check just to make sure it pulls correctly. And so it does. So it pulls both of the documents. Now, one of the things about moving a Google Drive document over into VoiceFlow is that it has to end in a .docx. If it's not .docx, then it'll throw an error. So you have to do a couple items. So you have to do a Google file conversion. So add conversion. And so Google Docs will just do the MS Word document. And then we'll also create a transformation of the file name in the next step. So we'll just test this just to make sure it works. And it is Office document, great. And now we can move on to the next step. So like I said, we have to make these files end in docx because it's going to be a Microsoft file. And if it's not, VoiceFlow doesn't like that and it'll throw an error. So I have created a code to address this. So I'll create the code node and then I'll just go ahead and copy the code. And I'll explain what the code is. So effectively, it's bringing in all the inputs from the prior file. So it's going through all these data files or whatever's in here. So if I have 5 files, it'll go through all 5. And it's picking them up in items. Then this is creating a for loop. So it's creating a loop that's going to cycle through each of the items in the items variable. So there's a list of items here. It's going to cycle through each one of them. And for each item, it's going to call it item for the code later on. It then checks to make sure that it is a binary file. So it's doing this condition. So if it's a binary file, it'll continue on. Otherwise, it'll just return the input that it received. And then once it's confirmed that it's binary, it's going to capture the file name. And that effectively is going to let us be able to identify if it ends in .docx. If it does end in .docx, we want to append it because we were doing that transformation in the prior step. And then this will check check if it is .docx, and then it will append the file name. So if it already has .docx, it's not going to reappend it, but if it doesn't, it will append it. So that's a nice feature that this code allows. And it's just going to return the documents as they are. It's just only going to change the name. So let's just test that just to make sure it works. Yes, it does. And it ends in .docx. All right. Now the last part, getting it up into VoiceFlow. So just so that we can see if it works, we're going to go to the knowledge base. It doesn't show up here at, there's nothing here. And another thing that we'll need is the API key. So the API key will be under interfaces, API keys, and you can find the key here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that for the next step. Ooh, copy that for the next step. And then we want to do an HTTP request. And we want to create this. So I don't remember the exact command. So I'm going to go ahead and copy from this. So we want to make a post command. And we have to target this API VoiceFlow knowledge base URL upload. Now, there are a few extra commands that I'm adding. So I have overwrites equal to true. So that means if the file already exists, what I'm doing will replace that. And that's ideal because if I'm updating the file, I don't want the old files to exist. So this is just going to replace them. And then it also is going to define the max chunk size. So that's just for the RAG process to determine how big the chunks are going to be. We're going to set authentication equal to none. And that's just because we're going to use the authorization down here. Depending on how you want to structure this, you may want to use the authentication up here. Just for me, I find it easier just to put it in the headers, and it flows exactly how I want it to. And then it also lets me do things a little bit more robust that you can see in the later process that I'm going to show in the second half of the video. So this is the VoiceFlow value. So this should equal what I have here. So confirm, yep. Confirm that, and then we want it to accept. And we just have to say where we want it to accept application and JSON format. And then we are also sending it of the body. We set it to form data, and then NA in binary. And then we have to name it file because the API is expecting file. And then we're putting data here, and we're putting data here because data is the name that's shown up right here. And so that's just how you bring in the data files. You just have to name it what it's shown there. And then that's it. So with all this, you can see it over on the right-hand side in terms of it was uploaded or it's currently pending. But if I go over to the knowledge base, I can see both of the documents here. And so that's ultimately the goal of what we wanted to do. And so I will be providing a link to this simple workflow in the description. So go ahead and check that if you want to use this as a starting point. Now, if you are wanting something more complex and more robust, you can always take this and expand on it even further. So what I have done is I've created a more robust workflow to do more than just one knowledge base. So effectively, this is meant to capture a handful of knowledge bases. So maybe you are an AI agent provider and you have multiple clients and you want to upload all of them and you want to have a single run that takes care of all of that and something easy to upload and manage. So I created a workflow that helps a lot with that, and I'm going to explain the flow of it in here. I'm not going to go into details of exactly all the nuances, but I'll show at a high level what I'm doing in this process. So with that, I'm doing a schedule trigger. So once a day, I feel like is appropriate, but depending on if you self-host, you might want to do it more frequently. And what I've done is I've created an Excel sheet that has all of the information that I need. So the Google Drive folders, as well as the VoiceFlow API keys that are all consolidated in the Excel spreadsheet. And that allows me to cycle through all the different folders and the respective API keys to then upload each individual one in a single run. So it'll cycle through all the items in the Excel file. It'll upload all the knowledge bases for all the AI agents that I have. And I don't have to worry about running, and I don't have to recreate this entire workflow for each AI agent that I have. I can just have one and just add it to the Excel spreadsheet, and it'll just automatically follow this more complex process. So have to filter some items out that will create issues. So anything that's missing the API key or the Google Drive folder, I remove it and I kick that out. And then I go and loop through all the items that are remaining. So because if you delete a file from the Google Drive, the simple process doesn't necessarily account for that. It'll just replace what was already there. And again, you can use different triggers. So if you want to trigger it on a file update, you can do it in the simple model. This process that I've created checks to see if any files need to be deleted as well. So it checks what files have been updated, it checks which files are new, and it checks which files have been deleted from the Google Drive, and consolidates all those into an actions list for this NAN to execute on. So with that, I do an API key to capture all the items within the knowledge base. I then split those items out, and because it comes out as a single item, I split those items out, and then I merge that with a list of all the files in the Google Drive. I merge those together, and then I have some code that compares all this information and then helps define whether I should do the action of adding it or replacing it, or if I should delete it, or if I should do nothing. Because if it's not going to update it, I don't want to run the APIs unnecessarily. So I assess all that with this code. And with all that information, and then for each file that I need to take an action for, it'll go and loop through them. So it identifies for each item whether I need to update it, I need to remove it, or I need to do no action at all. If I need to update it, it'll go download the file, rename it, and then upload it. So this part is what you had in the previous process. So the simple process, just use this, and this. So it does all those three things. This rename is a little bit more complicated, so it handles more file types so that it appends it correctly. And if it needs to be removed, then I have this delete VF file. So this just does an API key, just delete it. And that happens when a file was in the Google Drive or no longer in the Google Drive, but it is in the VoiceFlow. I want it to match what is currently in the Google Drive. So it'll go ahead and delete that. And then it'll loop through all the items. And through each process, it will cycle through, once it goes through this process for a single folder, I just have it waiting for a little bit of time just because I don't want to blow everything up all at once. I have it waiting for a few seconds, and then it'll start the entire process over again. Now, ultimately, I can add on to this, or you could add on to this if there's something that you're interested in doing it. You obviously would probably want to add an error trigger. I plan on having this email me. With this, you feel you should be well equipped to take all of this on in terms of either creating a simple solution like we have here, or have ideas to expand on that simple solution and create something a little bit more robust that fits your use case depending on where you're at. If you have any thoughts or questions, I'd love to hear them in the comments below, and thanks for watching.